We'll start then, David. Good evening, everyone. This is the Goose Rocks Beach Advisory Committee and our first summer meeting. We've got a pretty packed agenda. We'll try and move through it quickly. Let me do attendance first. Kate Burke.
Here.
John Dykstra.
Here.
Joanne Guston.
Here.
Jim Overhill has a personal issue and it will not be here tonight. Carol Sherman.
Here.
Jen Wasserman.
Here.
Mike Weston.
I'm here.
Richard Driver. We have 7 present. Let's do the minutes from June 4th, our last meeting. Kate circulated the draft. Any corrections? Can I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
John, a second.
Second.
Okay, on the minutes, Kate,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Joanne,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Jen,
Aye.
Mike, I assume you're going to abstain?
Abstain, right?
And I vote yes. We have 6 in favor. All righty. Election of officers, we put this off. Usually it's in June and we put it off until the selectmen chose the new representative or the representative from the Board of Selectmen to the Beach Advisory Committee. It's open for nominations.
I'd like to nominate
Chair.
Richard. I'd like to nominate you for chair.
Is there a second?
I second.
Any other nominations? Hearing none, the secretary can cast a vote for the board.
That again.
Call the vote.
Call the vote, in other words. Okay.
You want me to call the votes? That's fine.
I'll be happy to call the vote.
No, I got it. Kate,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Joanne,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Jen,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Nominations for vice chair.
I would like to nominate Kate for vice chair, please.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any further nominations for vice chair? Okay, hearing none. Kate,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Joanne,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Jen,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Nominations for secretary.
I'd like to nominate Carol Sherman.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Any further nominations for secretary? Hearing none. Kate,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Joanne,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Jen,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
and I vote aye.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you, Carol.
Secretary. There are women's rights here.
Richard, can I say one thing? As an
Sure.
outgoing secretary of 4 years, I'd like to say a thank you to Tricia Saunders, who has been all those years doing wonderful first drafts on these minutes. I mean, she's the one that really goes through with such care, and it's been a huge help and it will be Carol too, to have somebody making that first cut. Thanks a lot, Tricia, for all these years of good draftsmanship.
Well, a big thank you to you, Kate, for doing the minutes. I know the secretary position is sometimes a sort of a thankless job, but it's a necessary one, and you've been great.
Thank you.
And I'm sure Carol will be as well. All righty. David, could you bring Megan Sims and the other people with her? So for the audience, we had scheduled a water quality and testing presentation for March, and our meeting was canceled because of the coronavirus. And Megan Sims has gracefully consented here. Pardon me? So-
I just promoted Werner and Chris, and we need Allison. Do you see Allison in there?
So Megan Sims is with the Maine Healthy Beaches, and I'm going to turn it over to her for presentation. Megan, you're on.
Can you all hear me?
It's soft.
Okay, just a second.
Am I on there too? Allison?
Yeah, Allison is actually starting the presentation.
Can you guys hear-
Allison, you're there, but you've got to show your video. There you are.
There we am. Okay. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
All right. So I was just going to give a little recap about Maine Healthy Beaches program. And so Maine Healthy Beach was established to ensure that Maine saltwater beaches remain safe and clean. And the program brings together communities to perform standardized monitoring of beach water quality and to notify the public if health risks are detected, and to educate both residents and visitors on what you can do to help keep Maine beaches healthy. Maine Healthy Beach is a unique partnership among municipalities, state parks, Maine Department of Environmental Protection, nonprofit organizations, state and federal agencies, all committed to improving the water quality of our beaches and focusing on sharing and problem solving. Kennebunkport started participating with Maine Healthy Beach in 2004, and we do conduct weekly water testing at Goose Rocks Beach and Colony Beach from Memorial Day to Labor Day. Field monitoring includes water samples and measurements of air and water temperature, salinity, weather conditions, and any other conditions that may affect the water quality, like rainfalls or crowded beaches with lots of swimmers, flocks of birds, boats, etc. Samples must be to the lab within 6 hours of collection, and the results are back to us within 24 to 36 hours later. They're testing for the bacteria levels, and if the bacteria levels are elevated, we put up a contamination advisory sign at the beach. We post it to the town website and where beach stickers are sold. So we post the beach with a rainfall advisory as well if we receive 1 inch of rain or more in 24 hours, as rainfall also increases bacteria levels in our waters. We leave the rainfall advisory up for 24 hours after the last rainfall, or at least 2 tidal cycles to flush out the waters. All this information can be found on the town of Kennebunkport's public health website or on the Maine Healthy Beaches website. And you can check any status of any beach in the state of Maine that participates on the Maine Healthy Beach website. 2019 and 2020, we started to really increase our watershed testing at Goose Rocks Beach. We were looking for sources of contamination, and we increased testing up the beaches, up the rivers that feed to the beach. We also tested and inspected storm drains, inspected septic systems, and we collaborated with Maine DEP and the EPA and other town departments, code enforcement, wastewater department, and the highway department to coordinate these efforts for testing and resources. We distributed educational materials on the best septic practices over to over 100 homes in the Goose Rocks area last fall. And we plan to continue this effort. So now I'd like to introduce Megan Sims from Maine Healthy Beaches program and the Maine DEP to share our efforts and results and explain future plans and try to answer any questions that you may have. We also have Chris Simeone from the wastewater department and Werner Gilliam from the code enforcement here this evening, who's also been part of the efforts of this process and are here to answer any questions that you may have. So Megan?
Can't hear you, Megan.
Can't see you, Megan.
Just a second. Let's try this again.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm going to try to join Zoom with my organization, but I think I can figure this out.
It's no good.
No?
No,
Your sound is kind of cutting a little bit.
in and out, cutting in and out.
I'm gonna go make my bed.
Okay.
I'll be back.
All right.
Tell me if I miss something.
1301.
You know, Dave, it sounded like a connection. I wonder if she just tried to plug that microphone back in again and set it carefully.
Now. How about now?
Hold the plug up against the laptop. See if that helps.
How about now? Nothing?
Well, it's
You're
very
very-
mild.
you're
Her
very
level is
low.
really low.
Okay. What if I get really close to my computer?
You're
Here we go.
good.
I'm good?
Yep. So do you want me to do the PowerPoint, Megan, or are you all set?
I think I'm set. Let me know if it's showing up for you.
There it is.
Give me just a second. All right. I apologize. You think I'd get these technical difficulties figured out, but we're going to get there.
Oh, that's a shame.
Can you let me know when you can't hear me? How about that? Yell at me.
Good.
Okay, thanks. So as Allison said, I am the coordinator for the Healthy Beaches program, and
I wonder if she called in.
Yeah, I have the phone number in front of me, it should be in the invitation I sent Megan. The only thing is her phone call will come in as an attendee. And so we'll need to promote that phone number and I need to know what that phone number is. Do you need a phone number, Megan?
Can you write the phone number down, Megan, and hold it up to the screen? Two 2515. You got it.
Place. Go on. Go. Punch.
Whoops.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Woo! Okay, we've got this. All right, let me fly through this now since you've been so inconvenienced by my technical difficulty. All right, so you can still see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, so as Allison mentioned, I'm the program coordinator for the Healthy Beaches program at Maine DEP. And so we work with communities to monitor beach water quality, but we also work with some communities to do additional source tracking work when they have areas that they have pollution concerns in. And so we've been working most recently with the town of Kennebunkport from 2018 till now to address water quality issues in the Goose Beach watershed. Yes. So I'm not going to go over the details because Allison already shared with you, but I will say the monitoring frequency has increased for the past 3 years. And so typically the beaches in our program where we perform monitoring and assessment and then public notification of water quality issues, typically our communities only monitor their beaches 1 time a week. Where we have areas with issues or towns that are more proactive, we monitor twice a week, and Kennebunkport is one of those towns where we monitor more frequently to assess water quality at the beaches, and then we are doing the watershed monitoring in addition to that beach water quality testing. We currently monitor 3 active sites at Goose Rocks Beach. We have the names for them are GR1, 2, and 5. So the GR1 and 5 are the 2 river mouths where we have most of our bacteria exceedances. Just means that that's where we have elevated bacteria counts. And then we have our 1 site on Colony Beach. We like to give a shout out to our volunteers. These are some both current and past volunteers because our program was completely voluntary and we couldn't do it without them. So we appreciate everyone who's participated both now and in the past for the town. It's a service to us, but it's also a service to the town, and we're really proud of the support that you all have in your community to do this work. Not a lot of time, so it's pretty great. As Allison mentioned, we've been monitoring in this area because of frequent beach exceedances. And so beach exceedance means that there have been bacteria levels that have been over our safety threshold. And we like to let towns know that this is not the only town with those frequent beach exceedances. This is not the only area where we have some persistent issues with water quality. But this is one of the only areas where we have enough local engagement to try to do something about it. So this is why we're engaged, because the town's engaged. Otherwise, we monitor beach water quality and we let the public know that there's an issue with these advisory overlays for our signs. But some towns don't have the capacity or the local interest to follow up on these issues. So we do here in Kennebunkport, and as you guys probably all know, these are the signs where these advisories will be placed in at the beach locations of your town. As I said, our program is typically about doing beach water quality monitoring and then notifying the public when there's an elevated situation at the beach, and then that's it for most communities. But for those who are more interested, and when we have the capacity, we move beyond to try to assess the risk of illness at some of these beach sites and try to evaluate any of the impairments that we know about or that have been determined in the past and try to figure out what's going on. And so that's what we've been doing here in the Goose Rocks Beach watershed. There's been a lot of work done over many years to try to get at these issues, and we are currently actively trying to do that again as well. And as part of our efforts, we try to establish collaborative partnerships to do this because limited resources dictate what all we can do. And so by forming these partnerships with other municipalities, the EPA, as Allison mentioned, and also other universities, we can do more with less and try to get more support to do these efforts. So we're pretty excited about the partners we've been able to bring into this project so far. Back when the town joined the program in 2004, there were a number of water quality issues, particularly at Goose Rocks Beach, which prompted a water quality effort similar to what we're doing now that the town supported, and Healthy Beaches was a part of that, but not the lead on that project. And so the response to those issues was additional water quality monitoring. That's when they started to evaluate the watershed, not just the beach. And you can see in their cover image here where they had sites all throughout the watershed trying to figure out what was going on. And they did a lot of GIS work to try to map out the different the streams and the water bodies and potential sources. And so they were looking at for what we call hotspots, so areas where the bacteria is higher more often than in other areas. And they identified in that report areas where they thought there might be human sources of fecal contamination making its way to downstream beaches at Goose Rocks 1 and 5 at the mouths of the Little River and the Batson River. And their recommendations, among others, were to secure additional funding, because as I said, these monitoring efforts aren't cheap and the fixes aren't cheap, and also to use more source-specific methods, because the bacteria that we test for is not source-specific. It tells us that there is fecal bacteria from a warm-blooded animal, but we don't know if it's a bird, a human, dog, we don't know. So that was one of their recommendations as well. And so we began this effort. The town reached out to Healthy Beaches to ask, after we had seen more exceedances in recent years of water quality standards, they reached out to say, we want to begin investigating this again and try to figure out what's going on. And so these are just a few members of the Watershed team. I don't have pictures of everyone, but we're really appreciative of everyone who's put in their effort, both at the town and through Maine DEP. It's been quite a team effort between both. When we're looking at this watershed work, we are thinking about sources from many different types of impacts to the beach. So whether that be septic systems, which you're going to hear a little bit more about, whether that's wastewater infrastructure, which you're going to also hear about, specifically sewer infrastructure, birds, wildlife, pets specifically as well. These all sort of diffuse sources combine to create issues at these river mouths and at our beach sites, particularly after we've had a lot of rain. As Allison mentioned, you guys post those rainfall advisories after heavy rain events. Some of the sources we've been thinking about for the Goose Rocks Beach watershed include mammals, birds, gulls, ruminants, canines, humans. These are some of the sources that we're able to test through a partnership with the University of New Hampshire. They've been able to use their DNA tests to identify specific sources from the water samples that we collect. So we have a better sense of what's causing issues in the watershed and how we can more effectively address those issues. We're specifically, I guess, primarily concerned with human sources, although we do care about the other sources that are contributing. But when I say human sources, I'm thinking stormwater. Like I said, after rainfall, I'm thinking septic and sewer infrastructure, so any sort of wastewater methods. Those are what we're mainly thinking about when we think about human sources, not specifically people themselves, but some of these wastewater disposal systems and stormwater, which can carry a number of pollutants to the downstream Goose Rocks Beach. As part of our efforts, we've taken what's called a Toolbox Approach. It's pretty common lingo in my world, but it might not be in yours. And so that just means we try to collect as many parameters as we can that help us hone in on areas that may or may not be human sources of pollution. If they're not human sources, then we use other methods of trying to address those pollution issues. And so for the Goose Rocks Beach watershed, we have used bacteria. So NRO, the top item there, which is our common parameter. We've also used optical brighteners. So for those of you who aren't familiar, they're whitening agents in toothpaste and laundry detergents. So they are in wash water, they are in septics, and so it's a pretty low-tech way of trying to get a human source. Through a partnership with the US EPA last year, we were able to incorporate more methods into our testing. So we were able to add in testing for pharmaceuticals and personal care products that are in the water body through their metabolites. So they have to pass through the body. So we tested for a number of those. We also did some additional bacteria and DNA source testing, and then some screening toolkits. So testing for chlorine and ammonia and things like that in the water. But for the last 3 years, we've been primarily focused on the bacteria and opticals, but we've been doing as much DNA and additional testing as we can. I'm sure you're all familiar with Goose Rock Beach, but just before we start talking about where the sites are located, when we think about Goose Rocks, from our perspective, we're thinking about the major subwatersheds. So the Smith Brook subwatershed in pink, the Little River subwatershed in orange, and the Batson River subwatershed in yellow. And so, like I said, our primary goal when we started this project was to first evaluate that 2006 report and to look at the sites that they had monitored, which beaches, as I said, was a part of that, and to reevaluate those areas to see if they were still a problem, and if they weren't, if there are new areas that had been a problem. So we were looking for what we call, as I said, hotspots, areas where we have the greatest level of bacteria over that threshold. And so what we found were some major hotspots right down here by Goose Rocks Beach. And so these areas along New Bedford Road here, upstream here, this is the Little River, and then the Batson, and then Smith Brook. And so areas along in Smith Brook, and then downstream here between Smith, or where the Smith goes into the Batson. So what we were looking for were hotspots. And what we did with that information is we used that to prioritize the DNA testing that we conducted, because we weren't able to, with limited funding, we weren't able to test every site for every source, so we had to do some prioritizing to figure out where we wanted to test based on where we were having the largest amount of bacteria exceedances. So to orient you to my next figure, I want to show you what these big icons stand for. And so I want to show you sort of visually where in the watershed we were seeing different sources. And so if you see a black square with an M, that means a mammal. So a mammal is general. It includes humans, it includes ruminants and dogs. It's this overall group. And then you have humans specifically. This cute little guy here is representing birds. It's the best icon I could find. And I couldn't find another bird, so here's a gull. Here's your big G for a gull. The dog, of course, is canine, and this little sheep here is a ruminant. So cow, sheep, things like that. So now that you know what this means, hopefully you can all see this pretty well. But what I wanted to do is, rather than pull out numbers and get into those sort of specifics, I wanted to show you visually where over the past 2 years where we have been able to test for sources, where we have seen different sources. And so some of these areas haven't been tested for everything. So don't think that the absence of an icon means there's nothing there. It's just where these are what we found in those areas. And so I just wanted to show you, sort of give you a representation that sites down here at the river mouth, and this icon should be moved over. This map was just before we moved it. But yeah, so the river mouth site here, Goose Rock 5, we've found in at least one sample, again, this doesn't tell you how many samples, but at least one sample, we've had dog DNA, gulls, humans, mammals, and birds. The only one you don't see is the ruminant. We haven't found any ruminants anymore. But in other areas, so say here, where the Batson River meets the section where the Smith and the Batson come together, so far we've only found dog and mammal DNA. But we have seen humans upstream. So, it's a grab sample, which just means it's a water scoop. And so sometimes you don't capture a specific source in that sample. It's all kind of the luck of the draw, but we do our best to remain consistent and collect them in the exact same spot to be representative over time. But you can see there are differences throughout the watershed, and we do have canine DNA in areas near the Little River, also at the mouth over here of the Little River at Goose Rocks 1. We're seeing canine DNA throughout the watershed. And we're also seeing, of course, mammal, which can be any mammal, and then human in different areas throughout the watershed as well. So here, so we're seeing several different sources, which helps us prioritize our efforts. And just to give you a sense of, you see all the icons, but what does that mean? How many samples had human? How many did this? I wanted to give you an idea. So out of the samples that we tested for human DNA, 20% of those samples came back positive for human DNA in them. Out of all of the samples we tested for canine DNA, 46%, so almost half of the samples we tested had canine DNA. And in birds, 93% of the samples. Birds are pretty ubiquitous throughout a watershed, as you can imagine. So it makes sense that we would find bird DNA. Mammal DNA was in all samples. As you can imagine, in the watershed like this one, where you have all sorts of wildlife, mammal DNA is prevalent. And we've seen that in every other watershed we've tested, where we've had mammal nearly 100% of the time. We have yet to capture ruminants in any samples in this watershed, but they have been in some of our other watersheds. So what are we doing with this data? There is, of course, more data that we've collected, but I'm not going to bore you with all of it right now. But what's the point, and what are we doing with it? So we work with communities to try to transform that data into something actionable. And so we want to help them identify these issues, not just say what they are, but where are they coming from? What could they be coming from, so that they can be removed and hopefully prevented in the future. And so we are continuing our enhanced monitoring this year. So we've been out twice to the watershed. We're continuing that work to try to verify if any pollution sources have been removed, to see if those areas are showing better water quality. We're continuing to use this data to try to help the town inform their investigative efforts of their wastewater infrastructure and surveying of property, septics, and also to help with work with Allison for additional education and outreach initiatives. We've had a lot of successes. I mean, it seems like a lot, and it seems like maybe, you don't have all the answers, but we've identified problem areas. There, as Allison said, there's been wastewater investigations. We have developed databases for septic and stormwater. We've done outreach. There's been a lot of successes over the past couple of years. And speaking of the wastewater, I'm going to let Chris and Warner discuss that, and then I'll be back to finish up some other sections. So I'm going to take it to Chris now.
All right, can everybody hear me?
Yep. Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So some of the efforts that we had made during this whole investigation, we kind of started in September. So September 30th through around October 18th, the crews spent several weeks down there uncovering manholes and cleaning our wastewater lines down there. When I say cleaning, I mean jetting. This was in an effort to pre-clean everything before EcoClean came down to camera those lines. I'd like to say a special thanks to the Fire Chief, Jay Everett. He actually sped up the process quite a bit for us by having a tanker truck available for us, so that we had a uninterrupted water supply. That made things go a lot quicker for us. So October 10th, we actually dye tested the force main that runs.
So Chris, she has the PowerPoint up, and I think Megan's looking for direction on what, if you want a particular slide up.
Sure, actually, if we can stay with that slide.
Okay.
So on October 10th, we actually dye tested the force main that runs from pump station 13 under Beaver Pond Brook over to Sandpoint Road. Upon doing that, we had no indications of anything that was compromised or any exfiltration. There was no evidence of that. October 21st, EcoClean arrived, and they completed some camera work on almost 5,000 feet of gravity mains. This was done in the area of Dyke Road, New Bedford Road, Kings Highway, and Sandpoint Road. Again, we had no indications of exfiltration or seriously compromised infrastructure. We did see some minor infiltration from manhole covers, as well as a few sagging lines, but nothing that would cause any leaks or anything like that. If you want to advance to the next one, Megan. And then on October 9th, I'm sorry, 29th, we spent the morning picking or cleaning our major force main. And this is from pump station 12, which is down near the intersection of Dyke Road. This is what actually pumps all the wastewater from Goose Rocks Beach back to Cape Porpoise. This force main is almost 13,000 feet long. Again, we had help from Chief Everett and the fire department. He supplied a fire truck for us to help us with these efforts. So after pigging the force main, we also dye tested it. Again, we didn't have any observation of any exfiltration there. I did go down and monitor Batson River for almost 3 hours myself during this process. And again, there were no signs of exfiltration whatsoever. If you want to advance to the next one, Megan. So I don't think you'll probably find these facts too interesting or anything else, but again, that force main is 13,000 feet long. At this point in time, there's no reason to believe that any of the infrastructure down there where the wastewater is compromised that could be contributing to any of these issues.
Does it follow the road, Chris?
So the force main that runs from pump station 12, which is down by the intersection of Dyke Road, does follow Kings Highway toward the west. Ultimately, goes off into the sandy beach area, underwater, and back up onto Marshall Point Road. And from there, it follows Marshall Point Road right to Cape Porpoise.
So at times at low tide, you can see a very large black pipe that gets exposed. That's the force main?
That's correct, yes.
So it does get exposed at some tides, but that's not an issue.
Right. And you'll also see there's a big, large concrete ballast there that actually holds the pipe down.
Right, right.
And that'll be exposed at times as well.
I've seen it. Yep. Far out.
Does anybody have any questions?
All right, Werner, your turn.
All right. So,
Werner, Chris was very concise.
I know.
Subtle hint from your boss, Warner.
He did a very nice job. So yeah, Megan, if you want to go ahead and go to the next slide. So as you can imagine, and everybody knows, the vast majority of the Goose Rocks Beach area, is on the town sewer. But we do have a fair amount of properties that are located, within the watershed that are on septic. And so as part of our investigation, we worked to create a database listing, of a little over 200 properties that, are in the greater watershed. And so some of the things that we looked at specifically were, for the age of the systems, dates that they were installed, whether or not, we had adequate records or not for these. And from those, listings, once we mapped those out, we narrowed the data research down to, from that 197 down to 26 properties that we felt warranted a closer look, that were more closer in terms of locations within the watershed. And then from those 26, investigated about 14 of those properties, some of which, what we found were systems that appeared to be functioning, adequately, depending on what the usage was. So when we do an on-site investigation, we're looking for those obvious indications of a failure. We're looking for those those patches of green grass that wouldn't normally that may not normally show up in the yard. We're looking, we do the squish test, in the yard, any if there's any obvious examples of outbreak, that you may wind up seeing, and of note, we did not have any properties that, that showed up as having any visual or obvious outbreaks. We did offer up to property owners, who wish to participate with us if they wanted, if they agreed to a dye test. So we did dye test a number of properties that were specifically close to the water body, any obvious outbreaks or failures. We did.
Warner, what were the other 18? How we did 14 out of 26? What were the other 18?
So in some cases, where we approached property owners, we weren't necessarily able to get onto the property because we didn't have the consent of the property owner. So some of those, we weren't able to do complete follow-ups on. But as much as we could, within the water body, we're able to check to see if there were any obvious indicators or not.
Does that concern you at all, that the 18 that perhaps seem to have an issue of not letting you on? That concerns me. Does it concern you?
Well, as I said, does it concern me? Well, yes and no. I mean, there are some property owners that just aren't interested in in inviting a town representative into their house to flush dye tablets down the toilet. Some of these systems, we do know we have a number of older properties that have undocumented systems. As best we can, we research around the periphery, around the water bodies for obvious sources, as best we can without entering the property if we're not given permission. And I think, Megan can speak a little bit to that, is that if we do think that on some of these later on, we do have the option of enlisting the DEP, which carries some greater administrative search capacities than the town does. If we think we have we have a specific issue on a property. We did have one property that was up in the Tyler Brook watershed that was in a state of failure, but the property owner was in the process of having that system replaced, and as such that that system that we didn't have documented because of its age has since been replaced, and that was right around the time when when the DNA testing was being done. So while I'd like to say that that would knock out some of the human issues that we may have been happening, we won't truly know until there's further follow-up testing done further on down in the watershed at a later date. Next slide. And as I stated, it would be great if we had found an obvious issues, but we didn't find any evident failures, relative to septic systems. But as such, we continue to always educate property owners that we come into contact with. When there's new systems that are put in, we make sure that property owners understand, that their system is something that, that needs to be maintained. We encourage regular pump outs, of their tanks, as well as just good practices in terms of, what it is that they put down the drain, and recognizing that they're not on a sewer system and that they need to be, careful in terms of what they put in, because that's going to definitely affect the longevity, and the lifespan of their system.
All right. I will continue on just along those lines. Some of the work that Warner has been doing, we've been able to use some of the staff with DEP that have been working for me to turn that into something visual, a little bit more visual, where we have some staff who have the time. So creating septic system and stormwater databases, trying to collate all of this information to help keep track of when areas were were investigated and the age of property or septic systems on properties, just to try to help prioritize efforts. So that's all been part of this work as well.
Megan, excuse me, I'm sorry. Before we move on, I just would like to just mention one more thing.
Sure.
It seems to me that we have a number of older properties and folks that are probably on fixed income. To replace a septic system is considerable amount of money. I could imagine if I were in a situation, that's something that would be very frightening to me and difficult. Are there any programs that the town or the state offers where money could be presented and then maybe put as a lien on the property, so at least the individual could still remain living there without being priced out of? Is there anything that we can have people not fear the expense if something's discovered? It just worries me that that could be a real disincentive to have people cooperate and do and have it tested. But is there anything like that in place?
I can't speak to the towns because some towns do have that, but not all of them do. But there have been funding opportunities in the past. There's been loan programs. Some towns that have been able to secure grant funding to do some of this watershed work. As part of that grant funding, they've been able to help property owners, share the cost of some of these connections to sewers. And so I plan, and part of our reporting, there are a couple of funding avenues that I have been made aware of in the past. I don't know what the status of those are right now, but I can certainly follow up with those details because there have been such programs in the past. But you're right, it's expensive and it's a very quite a large deterrent for people to want to have their systems tested if they think that they may have to tie into sewer.
Precisely. So hopefully we'll look into that in some way.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Lori or Allison, Warner, you guys don't have any sort of cost sharing program there locally for that kind of work, do you?
We don't have a cost sharing program, no. State law does allow the selectmen to lien a property and replace the septic system if it's deemed to be malfunctioning after it follows a legal process requesting and demanding that the owner replace the system. But in this case, we don't have any malfunctioning systems that we've been made aware of and haven't gone through that process.
Right. Okay. Well, I will certainly follow up with those details for you all. And I'm going to let Allison now share some of the details which ties in really well with the septic compensation of some of the work that's been done to promote outreach in the watershed.
Okay, so as Megan and Warner both said, septic education is key right now with getting some information out to the community and to homeowners. And so last fall in 2019, we did, Sarah, who worked for AmeriCorps and for Megan at DEP with Maine Healthy Beaches, we provided some septic education packets that were distributed to over 100 homes in the Goose Rocks areas, along with making them available at last fall's Beach Advisory Committee meeting and at the November elections. This information is also currently available at the Public Health Office and on the Public Health website. And we plan to continue to educate the community on good septic practices. Unfortunately, COVID has thrown a loop for education and distributing a lot of things at the moment, but we're working through that all. But last fall also, Sarah, the AmeriCorps worker, personalized the Goose Rocks Beach What to Do with Dog Do flyer. And she specialized at 2 Goose Rocks specifically with the dog rules and the reminder of cleaning up after your dog, Clover education and reminding dog owners to keep their dog on the leash. She put all the dog hours and leash hours and everything on that flyer. And that is available at my office. And I will continue to distribute it as I can.
Allison, we can't hear you, or I can't.
So the the last slide that was just up was the flyer that Sarah had worked on altering for Goose Rocks Beach specifically, to take care of dogs and the plovers and everything like that. Okay, you can go to the next slide now. So currently, right now, we have this swimming advisory sign at all the entrances of Goose Rocks Beach, and it talks about the rain events and bacteria elevations. It has a link to the public health department along with Maine Healthy Beaches, and it talks about when we test our beach seasonally. And that Velcro strip at the bottom is where I would put the signs if we had a contamination advisory or a rainfall advisory. So you can go to the next slide.
Again, I'm beating a dead horse here, but when it comes time to update that sign, I would wish it would also mention that the bacterial levels tend to be high at low tides, and to make that people also aware of the fact of swimming at low tides at the mouths of the river extends
Right.
your risk of exposure. I think that's scientifically sound.
Okay, so that's kind of what we're working on right now is, and we did put up a caution sign this year. As you can see, it's under that Town of Kennebunkport swimming advisory sign now, and it's at both ends of the rivers, the Little and the Batson, and it says the mouths of the Batson and Little rivers periodically experience elevated bacteria levels, especially during and after rainfall. And it's advised to swim on the ocean side of Goose Rocks Beach and to avoid water contact in the rivers for 24 to 48 hours following rainfall. And it links us to the public health office or to Maine Healthy Beaches for more information.
Again, that's wonderful. It does not mention low tide, and I think it should. But next time we can do it. I would hope you would consider that on an update.
Well, we have been working on all this. It's been kind of a work in progress, and we have noted that not all low tides have bacteria high levels, but there are a significant amount. So we're just trying to figure out how to get that education out there.
I think you find that most are at the elevated levels, and then they can go above the number, but fair. Okay, thank you.
All right.
So as I said, we've had a lot of successes, but we have a lot more work to do. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon. There's a lot going on, but we are planning to continue monitoring. As Werner said, there's more investigations planned, and we're going to continue our work with improving the spatial and the data, the mapping to help the town with some of these investigations. I'm currently working on sharing any funding opportunities that I'm made aware of through my position, and supporting additional outreach this summer, thinking a little more creatively in light of COVID-19, but we're still working on providing that education as we've spoken about. And so these are just some of the examples of the outreach we've done in other communities, but we're continuing on with those efforts. I will end it for questions for anybody who has presented today.
David, do we have anyone who is in the public who has their hand up? Okay, maybe we could eliminate the okay. Pam, could you just give us your address, please, at Goose Rocks?
Sure, 52 High Tide Road.
And your question is to whom?
It's actually, I guess, to Allison and to Megan. I don't know if it would be helpful, but as you know, Allison, I teach at the University of New England, and we have a GIS program at UNE with a new faculty member, and it might be, it sounds like it could be a great student project for a GIS minor. They're required to do a GIS internship, and this could be a great project. And if you're interested, I'd be happy to share the contact information with you. Her name is Marcia Moreno Baez, and she's very anxious to get the students involved in projects in the local community, and this is right down the road. So it sounds like it could be a good project for the students.
I think that's a great idea. I went to UNE myself.
Thank you, Pam. David, is there anyone else? Okay, well, Megan, Allison, all of you, great thanks. Sorry it got put off for so long. And looking forward to your additional testing and an additional report.
Absolutely.
All righty, thanks a
Thank you
lot.
for. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Well done.
Thank you. Great job.
Thank you.
All righty, the meeting is open to the public for any questions, comments that are not related to items on the agenda. Okay, well, let's move on to the agenda then. We have a number of items where we're requesting appropriations from the Board of Selectmen. Let's go with the first one is for a bulletin board, which we discussed at our last meeting. And Kate has contacted the general store. They are agreeable to us putting up a bulletin board, and the bulletin board would be for official beach advisory committee and town notices. We're asking for a number not to exceed $500.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All righty. Kate?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Joanne?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
And I vote aye. The next item is the brochures. We did have some work done on the brochures early on before before the coronavirus issue, and it's a minor amount, but we should address it. It is $97 for work on the brochure. And can I have a motion to request $97
So
to
moved.
pay that bill? Is there a second?
Second.
Kate?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Joanne?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Jen?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
And I vote aye. The last request is for the seasonal dog signs. We discussed this also in the last meeting. It was to clarify exactly what the dog rules are. And we have an expenditure for designing the stickers that were an overlay and hopefully can be used again next year. And that's
The artwork can be used again. We'll have to produce the stickers next year.
okay.
But the artwork can be used again.
So we're the amount is not to exceed $200. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Second.
Kate,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Joanne,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Jen,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
and I vote aye. Okay. We did request funds from the town for staking and roping the dunes, and I'm going to ask, I don't know whether it's Jen or Kate, to give us an update on it. Well, one thing that we should acknowledge is the Kennebunkport Conservation Trust did provide racks for the kayaks on their property, and the work of the KCT is much appreciated.
And actually, though, let me just say that the racks themselves were through an effort by Paul Hogan and another individual who, unfortunately, I've forgotten his name, but I'll get it for the minutes, because this was another resident who just went out of his way to make this happen. It is in front of trust lots, and that's as much of Kennebunkport's participation at this point. We have made up some very small signs that we're going to put by the rack right next to it, just to tell the public that they are public racks, and that we invite them to put their kayaks there and keep them off the dune grass. And that will be a KCT contribution.
Jen, Kate, you want to give us an update on the
Sure. So we did purchase stakes and twine from and we had existing signs already that we strung along, and we had a good volunteer effort, and we got the entire beach that didn't have on the east side that didn't have seawall. So from a little bit to the east side of Jeffrey's Way down to just beyond Dingy Point. And so we had a group of volunteers that did it. It's great. And it's great. I've been seeing many fewer, well, there have been no kayaks that I've seen on the grass. People have not been breaching where we staked. So the grass is growing very well. And I've seen less kayaks at Jeffrey's Way, where it was really beating down the grass last year. So I think it's been successful.
Good.
And most of the kayaks are stored horizontally to the beach as opposed to vertically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Those are the ones I'm saying. We may have to revisit the staking. Carol informs me that when the plover season is over, pretty much, usually by around the beginning of August, the Audubon Society will come back and will remove the stakings that they've put up to protect the plover nesting areas, and those then will open again, and we will probably have to do some more staking to replace for the balance of the season on the east end and on the west end. So waiting till we hear more about that, but so far it's...
Although I will say, I was chatting with one of the Audubon women the other day, because they took down the cage for the plovers on the east side. And she was so delighted that we had done this. And she said, oh, I'll leave, I'll take the cage out, but I'll leave that up because it's great. In fact, she said, all of your staking also protects the birds that are around.
Perfect.
So she was delighted, and at least according to this one person, said she was planning on leaving up their staking.
That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at our last meeting, we talked about doing a survey of front property owners. And it, I guess, is essentially for next season, but it was a questionnaire to see whether they wanted stickers on to identify their kayaks, which are stored on their property on the 25-foot reserved area. Does anybody want to tackle doing a draft of a survey to the, I guess we have 65 properties, at least one is the town. There are a number that are owned by the Conservation Trust, and then the others are all privately owned.
Are you intending it to go out this summer, or something that we draft and we'll get it out after the season is basically over? It seemed a little bit to me when I realized, when I was doing the minutes and I went back and said, oh yeah, we did make a motion to do something like this, and realized we hadn't actually stepped up on it. That was back in June. I think we were envisioning getting it done before this season really started. And I guess I would envision at this point putting it off and giving it to sending it out in the fall or sometime rather than trying to get it out this summer.
I agree. I'm not sure that even if we had started on it after our June 4th meeting, that we would have gotten the response and gotten the stickers and what have you. But I would think that it's something that we would do in the fall,
Yeah.
anticipating doing something next year, Jen.
Well, so the question is, so you're talking about asking the signers of the beach agreement, those properties, if they'd like a sticker. The question is, do we need to survey, or it can't cost very much to print the stickers? Do we print the stickers and offer them and say, if anybody wants them, here they are? I'm just wondering if we need a survey or not.
Well, the other thing that occurred to me was getting some feedback from the people who would be implementing these stickers, who would be going around, primarily the CSOs. Yeah, it's the right term. That would be going around putting these stickers or investigating, seeing that there are stickers on kayaks that are otherwise left out overnight or something like that. I don't know whether they're seeing enough of that happening. Is it an issue for them? Is it confusing for them? So I was thinking of it as being sort of a two-part effort of finding out from our experiences this summer, where we've taken efforts to protect the dune grass, encourage people to put their, kayaks horizontally. We've also talked about we still need to revisit how's it going on don't leave things on the beach overnight. I think there's a lot of stuff that I would almost prefer to get the feedback first and then decide if we need. I mean, your idea is a very valid one. If it looks like there's some confusion there for the CSOs and trying to figure out, well, who's got a right to just leave their kayaks out there, maybe we think about it at that point, either offering them outright to them or surveying them or something.
So the issue is actually finding out if there's a problem, like clearing to those people. How much did you have people in front of your home leave stuff overnight?
Yeah.
And that's sort of the issue, because if it's not a big problem, then
yeah,
we don't need to.
Obviously, we're permitting people to leave kayaks on the beach overnight as long as they have them appropriately placed. I mean, that's not the same as tents, and I guess we're treating that differently. Tents and beach chairs and things like that.
Well, one of the things we talked about was lessening the effort on the CSOs and the police in terms of recognizing which kayak is permissible and which is not.
Yeah, this is why I'd kind of like to. I mean, we were very concerned at the beginning of the season, and we didn't. But I think maybe we're halfway through the summer. Maybe we wait. I'd like to get feedback from the people involved in it and say, is there a real problem we need to address? And then maybe figure out how best to address it, either survey or, stickers already available.
100%. I think you need to speak to the people who have been monitoring this situation, because if it's not an issue, why waste the stamps, the time, the survey? Let's make sure there is an issue before we go trying to solve it.
Okay.
And Joanne, just so you know, your audio was perfect. There was no feedback.
Perhaps I've cured myself. Who knows?
So Joanne, if we're not doing a formal survey, how are we gathering that information?
I think you need to talk to the CSOs. They're the ones who are looking. And actually, I had one of my kayaks in an improper direction, and the next day they came up to my door and knocked, and I had spoken with them many times. Yeah, you need to turn your kayak. I said, I know, I'm waiting for my son. It's pretty heavy. So they certainly, know who it is.
Great.
So I just would encourage us to determine if this is actually a problem before we go about solving it.
Well, we have the chief here, and I'm wondering whether he has a comment.
Thank you. Again, it comes down to somebody that actually feels that something's on their property, complaining that somebody has something on their property that shouldn't be there. And we have had 0 complaints about that. We have, I hear the sticker thing, but a lot of the kayaks are from back lot owners that have the permission of, a beach signer to leave their stuff there. And that could be challenging if you're only doing just the beach signers. So your thought is good, but I think once I get to my part, you'll see that we've issued a number of warnings. Most folks are compliant, and we haven't had a serious amount of issues. And your
Chief,
staking has worked well.
Chief, what about the issue? We've got 65 properties that are part of the beach use agreement. And then you've got like 45 properties that are not part of the beach use agreement. And for all but one of them, the town owns the beach. So how do you distinguish? I know the CSOs have a small map, but how do you distinguish between Joanne Guston's property and somebody next door who was a plaintiff in the case?
And again, we're relying on folks to say something. We've had a couple of those where we've had to address some folks that were leaving their stuff overnight that were not beach signers. It was a challenge, but with good communication and cooperation, they did comply. We haven't had to go that far to write anybody a summons. And again, it is tough. If you go down on the beach and, if you've lived in this house for 20 years, it's very easy for you to identify it. But if you're somebody that doesn't live there and go there every day, to identify who property is, this is just by look can be very difficult to kind of discern sometimes. And, I go down there and I do use the map and look at things. But it hasn't been a big issue this year, in my opinion.
So would you say that it is unnecessary for us to talk about stickers on the kayaks at this point in time?
I think, yes, I think it would be a wasted effort at this time, because I think your efforts with the staking, our tagging program has worked. And I'll be honest with you, the kayak, stands that the folks have put in different locations seem to be working well.
Okay, thank you.
We need a motion to table that motion, by the way.
I would make a motion to rescind the previous motion.
I'm fine with me. Second.
You're seconding? Good.
All righty. Any discussion, comments? Kate?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Joanne?
Aye.
Carol? Carol?
Oh, she's muted. There we go.
Aye.
Okay. Jen?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
Aye for me. Okay. So let's move on. Lori, could you give us an update in terms of the kiosk? Apparently there is one property owner close to Proctor who said that, people are double parking. They're not finding a parking place first, and they're double parking to get a sticker. Candidly, I haven't seen it when I've been down there. And human nature being what it is, you're going to have some people who do that and some not. So any issues in terms of the kiosk, positive or negative?
Well, I'm going to turn it over to the chief for the next two items, because he's been down there on a regular basis and the CSOs report to him, so.
So the kiosk, I can tell you, it seems to be working well. We try to clean it on a regular basis. There's been a couple of times where connectivity was an issue just because of the weather. We had that thick fog for a while, and but we're still issuing tickets. And I can tell you that the double parking thing, that's going to happen if there's a kiosk there or not. They do it at the drop-off spots. They do it at the store. It's never ending. And you try to speak to folks, but you got to have a little mercy, because they're trying to unload grandma, grandpa, all the grandkids and everything. So you try to do the best you can. But people unfortunately sometimes can't be patient. But I look at it no different than trying to get around like a landscaper that's down there performing your service. They're right in the way as well. So you try to be a little respectful as best you can.
How much use has there been of the kiosk?
as far as numbers, I don't have access to numbers to tell you. I know it's been busy, and I know that folks are using it. So, I don't have specific numbers for you, sir, because I don't have access to those numbers.
Okay. Any questions about the kiosk?
Okay.
Ready, David, I don't see anybody's hand up. Chief, you're going to do the next item, which is beach report, social distancing, parking violations, dog violations.
So I compared the numbers. So I used March 1st to July 16th as that's the date I ran the report for parking tickets. So last year at this time, we had issued 380 tickets down at the Goose Rocks Beach area. This year, we've issued 320 parking tickets. So we're pretty close. With all that's going on and with the parking that's closed, it's still busy down there. There's a lot of folks down there. The time I spent on the beach and speaking with the CSOs and the deputy chief and the officers, most folks are doing the social distancing thing as best they can. It gets tough at high tide. As far as masks go, that's a challenge, I think, at the beach. It's a challenge at the grocery store. So you can only imagine what people are like at the beach. So that part, I was pretty amazed that we were that close on the parking tickets because I didn't think we would be. As far as the tagging system, we've issued 49 tags for warnings on the beach for equipment. 35 of those were for improperly stored equipment. So it was either left out overnight or it was a kayak stored improperly. We issued 3 warnings for equipment that was left outside the reserved area. We've issued 8 for other violations, and I'd have to go through those hand by hand to figure those out. But that could be just about anything other than what our main ones were. And we issued 2 for no beachfront owner's permission. So we issued 2 warnings for that. So one of the CSOs had a conversation with somebody. They said, this isn't our stuff and then we don't know. So we put a tag on it and issued that. So the tagging system, I think, is working well. For other issues, since March 1, we've issued 20 dog warnings. We've had 3 fireworks complaints, and we've had 1 complaint about an illegal fire and a unpermitted beach fire, and we went down and had it put out. But that's it for the year so far.
Okay, Kate, I know you want to talk about the dogs, and so do
No,
I.
have a question too, that relates to the tagging.
Go ahead.
Okay, Chief, I'm just curious. As you said, you're tagging a warning, essentially tagging somebody who has left property out on the beach inappropriately. I'm just curious, what happens? Are all those things then being taken off, or are things left, or repeat offense? Have you had occasion to have to confiscate much, if anything?
I don't want to confiscate anything, because if I take it, then it's my responsibility, and I don't want to be responsible for all that stuff. So we've had to follow up a couple of times with certain violators, and then finally we got, we were able to get some cooperation. I know we went to Dinghy Point. It was kind of funny, and we issued several warnings for the dinghies that were stored inappropriately. And then the officer went back an hour and a half later, and somebody had moved them all back the way they were, so stored inappropriately. So somebody actually took the time to turn all the dinghies back the other way. I don't want to get into a match with somebody, but somebody was being kind of funny and moved all 16, because I counted them, all 16 dinghies back to the way they shouldn't be. But the officers get to know, the CSOs get to know the folks, and they see the equipment, so it's pretty easy for them to go up and knock on a door, and we've had to do that a few times, ma'am.
Okay.
Just curious, how does the dog ticketing compare to last year?
So I want to say we've noticed it's a lot. it's a lot of folks that are here for a day trip. We noticed. I was with a guy that had 2 down there the other day, and he was from Portland that came to the beach because his beach was closed for some reason, and wasn't aware of the violations. But all of them have not been repeat offenders, as far as I can tell. So.
Oh, that's good. I was curious, this is just, I mean, I'm not down on the beach that often, but most likely to be down after 6 o'clock to dog walk. And the other night, Saturday night, we were down, I'd say between about 6:30 and 7:15 on the East End. And I saw at least 5 dogs running around off leash. And I'm just wondering, what would on a Saturday evening at the height of summer, would a CSO normally be patrolling the beach at that time? Or I don't know what.
Yes, was that at the far end by the river, ma'am?
It was between the Proctor and probably Broadway entrances, because we had come back, we were exiting at the Proctor, and it was a little before we got to that. There were 1 or 2 dog families, with their dogs running around, and then I could see another 3 or 4 dogs in the distance between past Proctor. So it was not
Yep.
at the river end. It was, and I was concerned because I knew from postings on the Facebook page and everything else that apparently we have a fair number of plover chicks running around. So I'm concerned from that standpoint as well as from, it's just.
We do have somebody on till 8 o'clock, but again, it's a 2-mile beach, so
Yeah. Which raised another question. I mean, again, not trying to tell the CSOs how to do their business, but I've seen 2 people within very short space of time patrolling the same area at the far west end, which had practically nobody on it. I'm wondering, is there a way, I don't know how they divvy up, whether they patrol.
Can I speak to that 1 second, Kate? Because I mean, I have full view of the beach, and I was down there for 7 full weeks this year. I have never seen so many CSOs. What they seem to me to do is crisscross, and I think they walk at different speeds. So I think you're going to find some whatever. Also, I'd like to say that I've never before this summer seen an actual policeman patrolling the beach, and I saw that probably 6 times in the space of my just looking out the window. So I know there's 2 of them down there a lot, but the speed at which they walk greatly vary. So I think, you're going to find, they're not going to be able to space themselves equidistant at all times. But I saw more this year than I have ever seen before.
That's
You're
great.
also going to see an overlap from the folks that are on the parking detail. They're supposed to do the parking and then hit the beach too, to give you that overlap. So
Yep.
You're going to see that.
Great.
Alrighty, one question for you, Chief, is when do you decide that you're going to give a summons somebody who has their dog running loose? I had an incident a couple of weeks ago walking with my dog, and someone had a dog without a leash, and it tried to attack my dog. One of your patrolmen called me and said that he was going to give a warning to the person. And then he said, we are required to warn them once. This is someone who has a house here, has had a house here for years and years. Certainly should know about the dog rules and letting their dog run loose. So how do you make that distinction? It seems to me that somebody who's been here a long time versus a day tripper who maybe doesn't read the sign in terms of giving in a summons so that they recognize that the rules do have teeth in them.
That's a tough question, sir. I mean, we try to warn everybody for a first violation. I mean, it comes down to, it's no different than somebody has a dog roaming at large, a speeding complaint. I stopped somebody for speeding. I stopped somebody, drinking. I mean, we give warnings. I mean, we want to be made out these, these bad folks, but we don't want to do bad things to people. But, in most cases, if you've never gotten a warning before, I would prefer somebody to get a warning and say, enough is enough kind of thing. And
Yeah, the problem is that we have the complaint about the dogs running loose at times when they're supposed to be leashed. And we've had it every year since the Beach Advisory Committee was in existence. And it continues every year. And what Kate talked about, seeing 3, 4, 5 dogs running loose. We have Katie Nixon apparently at the Sandpoint area. It has been a constant complaint. She's raised it every year. She's raised it again this year in terms of dogs running loose. And I think, Chief, it's just like the issue we talked about with towing. At some point in time, people need to know that it's not going to be just a slap on the wrist or, don't do it again.
Would it be worth our while to sort of review the ordinance on dogs and maybe even consider eliminating voice control, sight control?
Oh,
Well, Carol, ask Bob about that. He was there when we did the fight and it was a fight because people wanted to let their dog run loose at their will, and it was a compromise. And I don't think we can better the compromise. They only have an hour and a half a day in the season to let the dog be loose with voice control. A little bit different off season, but I, for one, am not anxious to revisit that issue. But the majority, if you want to do it, we'll do it. I'm not sure what kind of an appetite the selectmen might have for revisiting it because they were in the midst of it as well.
well, and the other point, Carol, I of course, my view too on voice and sight control, unless you're planning on appearing at Westminster Kennel Club, I think it's more of a myth than a reality, but I'm not even going to go there because the issue, even if we revisited that, we still have the issue of people deciding to ignore it, whether it's the leash, the time of day they bring the dogs on the beach, or whether they have them under, quote, voice and sight control. And I think, I kind of agree with Richard. I think it becomes more a matter of enforcement. And, and we don't want to turn this into some sort of mini, I don't know. I mean, the beach is different than it was. It really is different than it was, certainly when we started coming up. And I keep constantly hear, gosh, we want the beach to be the way it was. We're neighbors, and everybody, respected each other's rights. Well, it's not necessarily happening anymore. And even if we change the dog ordinance, I think the key is enforcement. And I kind of have to agree with Richard, Chief, about you're saying that you're not seeing too many repeat offenders, and that's good. But again, like Richard's situation with the person whose dog attacked his small dog, whether it was, that was somebody that should have known better. There is a lot. I've gone up at times to people, often using the plovers as an excuse to try and be kind of a good guy, not bad guy, and say, gosh, it's really in your best interest to keep your dog on the leash because it's plover season and there's this enormous fine if your dog should happen to. But the fact remains that I've had people tell me, well, I don't have to pay attention to the rules. I live here. Like, well, so do I. Yes, you do. So there's a different attitude that I know you don't want to be in the situation, Chief, of having to slap somebody with a summons or a ticket right off the bat. But I kind of with the towing, I think some things have to be enforced and maybe the word will get out and people will pay more attention.
Chief, the incident that I had was, I guess if the guy had said, I'm sorry, I it was an accident, it shouldn't have been off the leash or what have you. That wasn't the response. He was a nasty guy. Chill out, you know.
But no, it's true that if he gets caught again, if this person does this again, it will not be a warning, it will be a ticket, correct, Chief? We give only one warning, right?
Yes, sir, it should be, yes.
So you can't make living here a liability. I mean, you've got to allow at least one warning. If it happens again, then there'll be teeth. I think that's how the system's supposed to work.
But on the other hand, I have to admit, in the situation Richard was in, I mean, his dog could have been seriously injured. These were bigger dogs that went after, or a bigger dog that went after his small dog. I had that happen one time when I had a friend's puppy with me that I was dog sitting for, and I took her to the beach. It wasn't the height of, no, it was summer. I take that back. And again, somebody had their dog off leash, and that dog was boom right towards that puppy. I don't think it really intended to kill her, but it scared her half to death. I mean, these dogs, there are a lot of reasons dogs should be on leashes, and I don't think that it's not hard to understand. Keep your dog on a leash. Or keep your dog off the beach between certain hours. That's not rocket science. So, I don't know, in the interest of protecting dogs that are following the rules, I think those that are not really should get something more than just a mild warning.
I think we sort of beat it around, and I think the chief knows that what our view is, and that it's still an issue in terms of enforcement, whether it's a warning or a summons. Somehow or another, we've got to be better in terms of getting the dogs leashed when they're supposed to be, and not running around. And I know there've been issues before. Some people say it's a comfort dog and what have you. That doesn't mean it can be off leash. And whatever the problem is on Sand Point, it's been more than a couple of years, and maybe we should have some real enforcement there. I would encourage you or one of your staff to talk to Katie Nixon, and probably you have talked to her in the past, but it's apparently a next door neighbor, and it happens all the time when they're there. Okay, Kate, I know you wanted the issue of discussing subcommittees. Can we put that off to the fall, to our next meeting?
Yep, I'm fine with it, as everybody else is.
Well, I guess I just want to make sure that there is, I think it's really important that there be a natural resources committee, and I think there has been, and I was unclear of, is that active? And I don't know. I mean, I guess we can wait, but I just want to make sure that I understand the committees, being relatively new to this committee.
No, I agree that, we had 3 subcommittees that I've been aware of since I've been on here. Natural resources was one, and I don't know whether John is sort of the chair of it now or what. I think one of my questions was, I think it's time to revisit the committees. I think in the past too, we need to, how are the committees structured? They should not, in my view, should not be staffed only by BAC members, by maybe a BAC member chairing each subcommittee, but we need members of the community. And we have interested members of the community for many of these issues to step up to the plate. But I'm certainly willing, we've got still a lot more things to cover that, I think are more critical to cover tonight. So.
Yeah, that's fine. I just want to make sure we do talk about it soon.
Yeah.
Well, maybe it would be easier if we had a particular proposal for the committee. I mean, we had an ad hoc committee on the kayaks. We have the natural resources where John is the liaison on that. We did have a parking and and Safety issue subcommittee, but it would seem to me that it would be more fruitful discussion if we had an actual proposal in terms of the number of subcommittees and how we staff the subcommittees.
All right, Richard, I'll be willing to take that on for some future meeting and go back through. I mean, it was an education to me as I was going back through all the old minutes, which I have now, and we'll be happy to pass on kind of a little history and suggestion as how they've worked in the past, from what I can tell, and what each has been supposedly geared to. That would be a help, Jen, and I think for all of us, maybe a revisiting.
Thank you.
Some sort of report for some future meeting.
The next item is a discussion of the GRB Facebook.
Yeah, this one I would like to see us go through. We looked at the GRB Facebook page was a creation early on, I think, to keep, I know Meg next number of other people were involved in it and did a fabulous job. And it started off with just maybe a couple of hundred followers, and now we're into the, Carol, am I right? We're close to 4,000 or we're well over 3,000.
Yeah, 3,000.
It got to, it came to me that, first of all, I mean, I am not particularly technologically adept, as all of you know. And it seemed like we had, to me, felt like a little bit of confusion over who was responsible for what. In addition, this spring, with all of the many issues that have been confronting the town and the beach, growing out of the COVID pandemic, we were getting not just what we all understood the Facebook page purpose was, which was to keep people apprised of, see pretty pictures, nice pictures of the beach, put up information about items of general interest, such as the water testing reports or an upcoming beach advisory committee meeting and an agenda for that. We were starting to get a lot of people, first of all, inquiring, looking for sources of information about, gosh, am I going to be able to come up? Am I going to have to quarantine? Am I going to have to, what's happening with the parking? And we were turning into sort of an information kiosk that was, we were trying to figure out how to handle that consistently. So Carol and I talked about this, and we talked with, she talked with Meg Berry, who has been the administrator of the Facebook page. The administrator is the overall person who has, pretty much power over the page, can decide who can edit, who can post, who can delete, etc. And Meg is very happy to continue, willing to continue, which would be great. But we all sort of agreed that maybe we needed a little more consistency or structure, sort of, and we needed kind of an editor-in-chief of somebody who is right here 24, who's here all year round. So what we proposed, we've talked with Audrey Lakin, who, as many of you know, if you follow the Facebook page, first of all, she and Paul live here full-time now, and she does amazing photography, as does Joanne. Joanne, you do some great pictures here too, and Carol putting information out. But I guess at this point, I'd say Audrey does the bulk of the photography. She's out there walking every day, and she's here. And more importantly, she knows her way around technology and Facebook in particular. She would be willing to take on this idea of being sort of editor-in-chief. She and Meg would work out whether to cut back some of the people who are editors, who technically can post things and whatever, and try and funnel it through Audrey as editor-in-chief. Some people, I think we would all agree, should stay on as editors that can post, like Joanne, who is, communications director as well as an excellent photographer, and Carol, who's now, secretary. But try and, this is just the thought, to try and make it. And the other thing we want to do, Carol and I talked about doing, and with Audrey, is creating some sort of general message in response to a lot of these questions that says, really the people you should be talking to are the town, give them the town website, and also the other place that's interesting for information that some people ask might be the new 3 Towns, 1 Community Facebook page that was begun by the Chamber of Commerce, or I know we have just one covering all 3 towns, or we have several, but they've done a very nice job being a source of information and a source for people to post things to try and, whether it's to find a rental or find a handyman who can do with this type of work. So that's kind of the game plan we're suggesting, that just sort of informational, that unless anybody objects terribly, we kind of go forward on that beat, and try and clean up, so to speak, regularize a little bit the Facebook page, since it has grown so much and it has become much more of a time-consuming effort to run this Facebook page.
Kate, out of
I
curiosity,
agree with you. I agree with you 100%. Someone to monitor the posts and the comments, which are not always positive, and that's the goal of the page. We certainly have strayed from the initial purpose of it, and I'd like to see it redirected back.
That's kind of our game plan. I thought too. So, John, you wanted to?
out of curiosity, what's the relationship of the Facebook page to this committee? Is it directly related, or is it?
Well,
is it speaking for us? Is it our reflection, that this committee's reflection into the community?
It was begun. And Richard, you and Carol, you've been around longer than I have. Mike too. I think you were around at the beginning of this. It was created, I thought, from reading back the early minutes of the committee, created as a way, was in a sense a creation of the committee, but not necessarily has to be the committee or run by the committee. It was created to keep people apprised of items of general information about the beach. And as I said, such as the water testing and meetings and agendas. And also just to keep people who aren't here all the time, they love seeing beautiful photographs of the beach. People love this beach so much, and having an opportunity, a venue for them to see the beach frequently. Carol, is that any other, or Joanne, any other thoughts?
So John, definitely born from the committee, but not necessarily reflective of the views as in politically or anything else.
Yeah, I think it's important that we know that and we state that clearly, because things can get out of hand on Facebook, and I think we need to be careful that it isn't, representing this committee per se.
A couple of years ago,
not our sounding board.
For the residents to communicate. It was for them to communicate on Facebook, for them to be informed, for them to ask questions or have comments, so that in some ways it was the committee felt, we don't meet that many times a year, that we had some way that the townspeople could communicate with us, and Facebook was at the time, we thought it would be a good social media to have the communication. I recognize, John, that there are problems with Facebook, and I don't think we've necessarily had problems other than when people think that they can advertise, I've got something that I want to sell or what have you. That's not the purpose of the Facebook page.
A couple of years ago, we did go back and restate the purpose of this. We sat down with Meg and Kate and you and I can't remember, Carol, I think you were there too. And we went back and posted one more time with feeling this is why this page is here. So perhaps we're bringing it up again and we feel we need to redirect and redefine or go back to its original purpose. Maybe it's time to do this again and post our mission
statement. We do have a mission statement somewhere, Carol reminds me, and I think it's actually a good idea to just say, this is the purpose of it, and keep it to what it was intended to be.
And if it strays, to politely remind, this is where you can go for this information. Right. And it's not here, it's there. And that's what the editor-in-chief can be responsible for doing. So I think it's a good idea.
And what Audrey would do is in the summertime, she would monitor the page every day where we get the most responses, and then probably in the wintertime, once a week. So somebody would be on top of good things and if something unfortunate gets posted too.
Can we move on to the next item, the Plover report, Carol?
Yes. Plover report, July 20th, 2020. Well, we are not what professionals call the most picture-perfect piping plover monitors, but we are committed and we sure try to get the job done. This year, we had nests all over Goose Rock's beach, both ends and in the middle. It could not have been more difficult. Several of our monitors had difficult situations to deal with and training had to be done differently. Still, we had a good season. As of Friday, we have 5 fledglings and 8 chicks. That means with any luck, we will fledge 13 chicks. This is our best year in a while. Last couple of years, we had 11. A gunquit has a chance of 33 fledglings. And the state of Maine now has 120 fledged piping plovers and 75 chicks. It has a chance of 195 fledglings. This year could be an all-time record. To make this short, like I promised Richard, I still would like to do this. There are many people I would like to thank. First of all, Barbara Varwise and Sammy, who are our core head monitors who never missed a beat in spite of a very difficult time in her life. Barbara Renkwell, who in the 90s was unable to do the stairs but had eagle eyes and watched her plover faithfully out of her window. Jenny Almeida, who had to have surgery. Rachel Sylvester, who lost all of her jobs. Garrett Erickson Harris, who's a student here in Kennebunk, who was faithful every week to come and give us all a report. And we monitors gave him a certificate of outstanding work for him and all of his work. And he was just mailed that the other day. Jana Di Costanzo for wanting to learn about the plovers. Lori Smith and Chief Sanford for helping us at any time that I asked. Also other people. And Wasserman, and there's so many more. Katie Nixon, Jane Garvey, Mary Ellen LeMay, Kelly Garvey Pellerini. And this year at Audubon, they had a girl whose name was Francesca Gundrum, and she was the best in the 20 years that I've taken care of the plovers that I've ever had, and was a treat. But at the end, I especially want to thank all those who don't care about the plovers, who think it's a waste of time, but still follow the ordinance and the rules to protect the species, because that's the hardest. We've had many criticisms about people not following, but I want to thank those a lot, everyone. That's in. Fast enough, Richard?
Thank you, Carol.
Very good.
The next item on the agenda is something we talked about last time, and it is remote access to the BAC meetings after we get finished with the emergencies and Zoom meetings. And I know Lori responded last time that people could use the local channel or YouTube to monitor the meetings. Now, obviously, someone in Florida isn't going to be able to tune into the local channel, but Lori, can people in a remote location from Goose Rocks, can they use YouTube to monitor the meeting and to participate? You're muted.
You can monitor, but you can't participate through YouTube. So the crew and I are still looking at ways in which we may be able to incorporate other people from far away into meetings in the future, but we are also waiting to see what the legislature does in regards to the allowance for that kind of participation from board members, etc. And, there are complications in trying to create a hybrid solution, but we are looking at those.
Right.
Okay. And that's not just for the Beach Advisory Committee, I assume. You're looking at it for the Board of Selectmen and Planning Board and what have you.
The other boards have not requested it. So we are looking at the capacity and we'll be discussing it with the Board of Selectmen.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I would definitely encourage it. And there's so many people who own property here who are scattered over the country at different times. And, it feels right to be allowed to, if we can, with technology, to allow them to have a way to participate.
I would just remind everyone that we are a small town with a small staff. And doing these kind of meetings, and especially in a hybrid situation, does require more complications. And so we're doing the best we can, but we're not prepared with anything at this point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Appreciate the fact that you're looking at it. And remind me of is the state of emergency extended into August now?
Yes.
Okay.
Ready. The next item is a discussion on signs, and I'm not sure whether it was Carol or Kate that put that on the agenda.
Nope,
Carol, was it you?
Probably.
Okay, well,
Very quickly, I think we need to look at all the signs. If you look down the West End, where we at one time had one sign, we now have 6 or 7. Some of the information is put down twice. Some of them are old signs. Some of them are signs that have no value anymore. And I just think, I know Joanne doesn't like signs either. So I think we need to look at how we have our signs. That's all.
Well, I suppose it falls on each one of us to take a look at the signs, and at the next meeting, we can talk about whether or not we can eliminate some or consolidate some.
I think we've gotten even more this year because of the needs of the pandemic, but I agree that it's every so often it's an issue that probably, it's our responsibility to, as we're walking onto the beach or taking walks, jot down locations and how many multiple signs you see at various entry points or whatever that actually probably lose their impact.
Exactly.
As you have multiple ones that you'd have to stop and read on. So I think that's a good suggestion to visit it every so often. And maybe we, after this season in the fall, when, we're still walking around, we say, okay. And some of them may disappear if the pandemic, please God, disappears.
Well, maybe we can take a look at them and then think about whether we could consolidate locations. I mean,
it's not information too.
Bulletin board is one place, and maybe we could eliminate some of the signs at some of the entrances. But I think that is something for our next meeting. Righty. The next item is not really in our area, but just because there are people who have asked questions about recycling and what's going to happen, and it is, especially in the summertime, lots of collection in Goose Rocks once a week as opposed to in the other times of the year. So, Lori, I know you've given the explanation, and I know, John, you have familiarity with it, but my understanding is that it was a budget item, and because of the budget, it was delayed until sometime after the first of the year, but it hasn't been shelved.
So we just had the town meeting on Saturday, and the budget was approved. This was the amended budget that was reduced due to, economic conditions changing with COVID-19. The budget as amended allows for the restart of recycling on January 1st. So John just wrote a short article to put in the tax newsletter that we'll be sending out in the next couple of weeks. And that will tell people to be on the lookout for other education opportunities as contamination is the issue. And the Solid Waste Committee is working on ways to educate the public about what is contamination and how to get clean recycling that will cost us the least and have the most benefit.
John, do you want to add anything?
No, well said, well said.
Okay, any other business? And we could also open it to the public if there's anyone there who has in the public who has a question or a comment. And because we only have one other item, and that's talking about a next meeting. So any other business, any other comments from members of the committee? And David, do you see any hands up? I don't at the moment. No. Okay. So discussion of next meeting. Sometime in the fall, I suppose. We don't know whether we're going to be able to have a Zoom meeting or whether it's going to be in person. Depends on the governor and whether emergencies are extended. But it would seem to me that we're talking about something like October.
Haven't we always done a July and an August for the summer,
So
folks?
we're canceling the August meeting?
Well, that was.
You know what?
Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
I guess we should have a discussion of it, and I didn't mean to sort of jump over August. We had at one point in time maybe 50 people participating. That includes us and Lori and the chief and what have you. We did not have one question. I mean, we had a lot of issues and people could have commented. So question, and we did have a presentation, which we didn't think we were going to have. We don't have a presentation scheduled for August, and in the normal course, the main part of an August meeting was a presentation of something of interest to the community. So what's your pleasure in terms of an August meeting?
My thought on that is that, these are not normal times. Who knows in the next 4 weeks what'll be occurring at the beach, where we're going to be with COVID numbers, what's going on. People are going to have concerns. It'll be a short meeting. It'll be wonderful. Let's do it in an hour. But I think it would be, I would be in favor of having a meeting in the middle to the third week of August.
John, are you proposing a meeting that is simply sort of a regular quote unquote BAC meeting, not one that's built around a presentation like we've done in past summer meetings to draw in people who are only here primarily in the summer? I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah, unless you want to see my sand again.
No, I want to see you for newcomers for sand.
No,
Lori, when is the emergency extended to?
21st, something?
You can meet in the month of August on Zoom because it's 30 days after the executive order expires. So,
Okay. So at any time in August.
Yes.
All right.
17th or the 24th or a Monday.
17th.
24th.
My birthdays in BAC meetings.
Well, it also depends on the availability of David. It's not just reserving a room these days. It is a little bit more complicated to organize a meeting. So give me a week to work on. The week of the 17th. What's your pleasure? And then we'll just have to see whether David can work it into his schedule, and it may be that he could tell us right now.
It's date. Yeah,
Oh,
it's
it's not gonna
It's
be before
Dave and
6.
Mike, it's Dave and Mike, first of all, so we need to check two people's schedules. I think it would be better to check it offline if you guys can just.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine, which is what we've normally done. I just would like to get a sort of a time frame that we're talking about, and
I think I heard Kate say the end of that week of the 17th, or maybe the beginning of the 24th.
Yeah.
Would be the window.
That part of August. I don't think, at least a month out from now, I'd say. About.
20th to the 26th, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
okay, well, many of the people who we want to attract to the meeting do leave before the end of August.
We're not so sure this year.
Well, that's true, but if they have kids that are going to school, and
We're not so sure this year.
If you're
I got
talking.
it. Let's work on the week of the 17th, and if it has to go into the following week, fine. And let Dave, could you and Mike talk about a date that doesn't conflict with planning board, board of selectmen, what have you, that works in your schedule? And the meeting will be 6 o'clock. It will not be earlier. Is that satisfactory for everybody?
Yep.
Okay. I think that ends our agenda. Just any last comment from anyone?
I'll throw one radical suggestion. Maybe we could begin at 7 o'clock. It would make dinner time a little bit earlier. Seems how it's going to be a shorter meeting, but that's just a thought. Or at least 6:30. 6 o'clock's an awful time to start.
Probably also for viewers.
Yeah, 6:30.
But, I mean,
6:30 works for me.
The Board
I'm
of
good with
Selectmen,
6:30.
It's always 6. The Board of Selectmen's always 6:30. Let's do it 6:30.
And our meetings, our face-to-face meetings used to be 6:30 then anyway.
Board of Selectmen's always 6 o'clock.
Oh, I lied. Sorry, you really? For the public?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Unless it's 9 o'clock in the morning or something, but otherwise it's 6 o'clock.
I sit corrected.
Okay. But your preference would be 6:30. David, with you and Mike, is it better 6:30 as opposed to 6? Okay. So what's your pleasure? 6:30?
6:30.
6:30 is good for me. Then I can
Okay.
have a quick dinner first.
Yep.
Right
I
on.
would vote for it, but I would with 6.
Okay.
It just
I'd prefer 6 because I have dinner afterwards, but that's okay.
I'll have to check my very busy schedule.
our social
Okay.
calendars
So
are so.
generally, we wanted meeting at 6:30, and Dave and Mike will be in touch as to a date, and I'll forward an email to you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Cheers.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Take care. Be well, be safe.
Richard, I think you need a motion to
Yeah,
adjourn.
I'm going to, yep. A motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Okay, we're adjourned. Thanks a lot. Take care.